A fixture which was once dominated by the red half of Manchester is now seemingly only won by the once called noisy neighbours. In today's video, we will dive into how Pep once again outwitted his Dutch lookalike Erik Ten Hag in what was a fantastic and enthralling match from a tactical standpoint. City set up in their usual 3-2-4-1 shape with Walker and Gvardiol either side of Ruben Diaz in the middle. Stones, Rodri, Bernardo Silva and Alvarez creating that box midfield was obviously Stones and Rodri's the deeper two. Foden and Grealish out wide and Erling Haaland through the middle is what we've become accustomed to seeing from Pep Guardiola. They can dominate the ball in the middle and they have that recovery pace of Walker and the defensive solidity of Diaz and Gvardiol at the back to stop goals from going in. In this match we saw a slight tweak from Guardiola with his system because Stones, he was venturing more into midfield than he usually would. He wasn't really in the backline at all, which created a big load of room and a lot of wide gaps between Diaz, Walker and Gvardiol. They were quite stretched and Diaz was almost that one man in the middle on his own, with Gvardiol and Walker sort of vacating the spaces on the flanks to stop the likes of Rashford from running in behind.
United's aim was to stop the utilisation of the box midfield for Manchester City, with Eriksen, Amrabat marking Alvarez and Silva, and McTominay targeting Rodri. Rashford and Fernandes tucked in to ensure none of the box midfield for Manchester City were free during the build-up play. This allowed the likes of Højlund and Rashford to exploit the open gaps that Manchester City had in their defence, like Zach said earlier, with the wide defenders of Walker and Gvardiol, and Rashford and Højlund were able to exploit this throughout the first half. But unfortunately for them, or for United, they were unable to capitalise on it.
Pep Guardiola quickly identified this issue and resolved it there and then. This is why the top managers get paid the big bucks, and which is why we don't, and we're just here explaining it.
Yeah.
Rodri and Stones, they both alternated, but it was more commonly than not than Rodri, who would slot in the back four alongside Diaz, alongside Walker, alongside Gvardiol, to make it a lot more tight, so there'd be less gaps for the likes of Rashford and Højlund, obviously Fernandes, with his clever passing to exploit.
With McTominay being so focused on Rodri, he'd be pulled out and this would create space in the middle of the park for Manchester City to pick up the ball.
However, despite all these frequent changes from Guardiola, his ultimate aim was to keep Gvardiol and Walker high and wide, because this would effectively draw out Rashford and Fernandes out to those wide areas, which would help City in the middle of the park and obviously help them have that numerical superiority. Although Bernardo Silva on paper was playing as an advanced midfielder in the box shape, he would drop in deep to help Gvardiol with build-up play, link up with Grealish, link up with Stones, and City were just creating that numerical superiority over on the left-hand side, the same as the right. So you had Stones, Silva, Gvardiol and Grealish up against the likes of Fernandes, Eriksen and Dalot. So there's always going to be that extra man there. And obviously Maguire, if he were to engage, he'd be leaving Haaland free with Evans. And obviously if Højlund was to drop in, then he'd have Diaz free as an option. So City were just constantly creating numerical advantages all over the pitch, playing with triangles, interchanging play and just causing havoc for Erik Ten Hag's side. In addition to this, Bernardo Silva's clever movement by dropping in would allow Grealish to have so much space on that left-hand side to create, and he was one of the best players in this match, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's fantastic in that game. It's it probably is his best performance of the season because he hasn't started much, and I think this could definitely get himself a starting spot in that team because him and Bernardo Silva have a really good chemistry, which we'll go on to explain later, and it's fantastic watching them play. And to elaborate on Zach's point, Dalot would be very unsure of whether to press Silva, and this would leave Grealish a lot of space on that left-hand side, and Dalot would obviously not marking him.
Caught in two minds, really,
yeah,
wouldn't he?
Exactly.
To mark Silva or Grealish.
Exactly. And like you were saying, obviously City were outnumbering United in every aspect of the field, and this is just another example of it.
As we touched upon earlier, Grealish and Bernardo Silva's clever movement where it would interchange with each other and take up each other's positions caused havoc for the likes of Dalot. Grealish obviously drifting into the half space, and then you've got Dalot, like you said, caught in two minds of who to press, and then you've got Eriksen monitoring Bernardo Silva, so that just caused havoc on that side for Manchester United and was obviously very beneficial for City throughout the duration of the game.
And Eriksen, with not obviously being a natural defensive midfielder, was very unsure on what to do with Silva because obviously Silva was on paper the midfielder for Man City and that was Eriksen's man.
Yeah.
But he's very unsure on what to do, and like I said, with the lack of defensive awareness from Eriksen, not necessarily his fault, but the position he's playing, he's again very unsure on what to do with Silva, and that's why Silva caused so much havoc for that Manchester United back line.
Because obviously Eriksen, if he does choose to mark Silva, then there's once again space in the middle, and we all know City thrive and love that
Eriksen
space
comes
in the middle
over,
of the pitch,
that's why he was very unsure, because when Eriksen comes over, he leaves a massive gap in behind him, and obviously City, as we know, would 100% exploit that.
So numerical advantages all over the pitch, isn't it?
It's very clever from Pep.
Eriksen would struggle to cope with Grealish and Bernardo Silva's runs in between the back line because he isn't really meant to follow them, although he's been instructed to stick with them. He's leaving gaps in the midfield, and he obviously knows how obviously punishing that can be for United.
Ten Hag's change at half-time, swapping Mount for Amrabat, was probably to add, a little bit more creativity, as Mason Mount is a lot better receiving the ball in between the lines than someone like McTominay, and he can create a lot more chances than McTominay, which is why we did see him take a back foot in the second half. As he filled in for Amrabat's position in the right defensive midfield slot, in that box shape, which Ten Hag may have seen as a great decision, as McTominay has a great engine and has great defensive assets when he is in position, but as we did see, he was pulled out of position in that second half, and obviously it didn't turn out to be a great change for him.
All of those tweaks Ten Hag made did not make much of a difference because City still managed to exploit the gaps with their clever movement from Pep, with his brilliant instructions and obviously the instinct from the likes of Grealish, Silva, Rodri and Haaland. Those four were so influential in the goal. You had Bernardo Silva in the half space, and because you had McTominay and Fernandes watching Grealish, they thought, he's going to play it to Bernardo Silva in that half space position, so we'll look to go that way. So obviously they get drawn into that sort of region because they know City like to play the ball around in the midfield. Bernardo Silva makes the overlapping run. Grealish finds him. Rodri, he's occupying Eriksen and Johnny Evans in the centre. They're concentrating on him, which leaves Haaland free at the back post to head it home. So that clever movement from Bernardo Silva, which is unlike what we would see from an advanced number 8 in the City team. And obviously Grealish reading that, and obviously the movement in the box was just really incredible. And these simplistic things that may go unnoticed to a lot of people shows you why Pep Guardiola and Man City's team still continue to improve and still continue to hurt teams.
I feel like the run of Rodri is very clever as well, and it's essential to the goal because it's such a good decoy run, because he makes a run towards the front post, which captures the eye of Johnny Evans, which is very weird because I don't know why Johnny Evans is marking him, because you can see Maguire and Eriksen in front of him, but it does catch the eye of him, and Rodri is the reason Johnny Evans has pulled out of position, and that's why we do see Erling Haaland on the back post, which, as we saw, put in a great goal. Grealish made one key pass despite playing as a forward this match, and Bernardo Silva, despite playing as a midfielder in this match, or a typical number 8 on paper, he made 3 key passes and created 3 big chances whilst having 37 touches in United's box, second to only Foden, who was playing as a winger, not a midfielder like Bernardo.
That shows you the incredible movement of Bernardo Silva and Grealish. The interchangeableness, that's not a word, but it is now. They were just so clever, and the understanding those two have built up, and Bernardo Silva always goes under the radar because he may not be a flashy player like a De Bruyne or a goal scorer like a Haaland, but he can operate in so many different positions to a high level, and he's pretty much excellent in every facet of the game. So having a player like him in your team is really good, isn't it?
It's very interesting to see Bernardo Silva take out that wide role, and City didn't really actually necessarily play with an out-and-out winger. Grealish often actually took that number 8 role, which is why we did see him create less key passes.
Because they usually like to hug the touchlines, don't they? The City wingers, they like to stay high and wide. But
but this game, this game they did, but they kept rotating it. Like I said, this is why we saw Bernardo obviously create so many big chances, because despite playing as a natural 8, he was really technically playing as a winger. And this is really interesting. It's really fascinating because we've not seen this in the Premier League before. It's like a sort of like a false winger effect. We've not seen this in the Premier League ever. And obviously, I'm sure teams will eventually. Well, exactly, it's Pep. He just comes up with things like this.
Teams will start to maybe mimic this and try and replicate.
Well, exactly. I think we'll look to see, in the future, that we'll see teams that will look at this and analyse it. And they'll start copying it, and we'll see loads of teams do this. Not even just Arteta's Arsenal, but not even United, not even Tottenham as an example. Loads of these teams will look to sort of implement this idea because Pep's come up with sort of a new idea here and a new sort of complete newfound tactic of the false winger, and I think it's really fascinating and really great to see, because obviously as we see Pep is still evolving, and it's crazy to see considering how good he is. The guy still keeps
and with the same players, although he does like to refresh his squad quite a lot. Bernardo Silva's been there for years, Foden's been there for years, Rodri, Kyle Walker, and they still all adjust to the different styles of play and different approaches from Pep.
It's fantastic to see because City's players are so adaptable as well. You see Alvarez picking up a midfield role sometimes. You see Foden picking up midfield and then playing wing. You see the two of Grealish and Bernardo Silva swapping around, like we said earlier, with their duo being very telepathic almost. And I think we'll see them two start a lot more now because of this sort of effect that Pep's put on. I think it'd be very interesting to see how Pep will continue to use them, because I think teams will really struggle to find a solution for it, because this constant swapping, it's going to be difficult to deal with.
As we mentioned earlier, Erik Ten Hag's change didn't really affect the game as he would have initially planned. Because City just had overloads on both sides of the pitch. You had Walker, Alvarez and Foden on one side, and Gvardiol, Bernardo Silva and Grealish on the other. Those three little trios congregated on each side and just knocked the ball round Man United, and it was just absolute carnage, and it was just really hard for Man United to get any foot on the ball, really hard for them to break the lines, and just numerical superiority on both sides, which obviously Pep is a big fan of. And also McTominay would be confused quite a lot whilst playing this match, because if he would engage with Stones and Rodri when they're breaking through the press and breaking through Fernandes and Mount in those advanced positions, he would then leave the gaps on the respective side, which was City's left, United's right, and it would just create more numerical superiority. So Pep effectively created a system and a tactical setup, which means wherever a United player would press, there would just be more City players congregated and more City players within another area, and it would just make United almost impossible to try and deal with City and their tacticalness and all the stuff that Pep just puts into his pot and stirs together before the match. Because yeah, it was incredible really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic to see Pep just always evolving, considering he's the best manager in the world and still improving.
As we just saw, City could have scored more in that second half. Yes, it was only 2, but they were so dominant. United looked lost for ideas.
Yeah.
They looked pretty lacklustre in that second half. City controlled the game, controlled the tempo like they did, and obviously won all the duels and had that numerical advantage all over the pitch.
3-0 probably was a little bit of a kind result for United, after that second half.
The performance was dominant, wasn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic to see from City, and obviously United's point of view is very miserable to see, but obviously, as we saw, City picked up that 3-0 win with this constant overload and the constant domination in that second half.
Anyway, guys, that is how Pep Guardiola once again outwitted his Dutch lookalike, as we said in the intro. No surprises there, and no surprises from Manchester City's team, because the quality is there, the tactics are there, and as we reiterated 28 times, the tactical nous is on another level. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, hit the like button and the subscribe button for more content just like this one. We really appreciate it. And comment down below, what were your thoughts on the match, and where do you see City and United going forward from this position? Do you think United will ever be able to challenge for Champions League? And do you think City will get themselves a 4th consecutive Premier League title? Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.